Good morning, good afternoon. Sorry, everybody that's joining us. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this webinar with ApprovalMax. We are just going to give everybody a few minutes to join, and then we will we'll get started. But if you can see my screen with the slide deck, and you can see myself and a moment ago Konstantin, please just pop something in the chat box so we know that you can see and hear us. That'll be great. So yeah, they're coming in. Excellent. So great. It's really good to know that people can see and hear us. It's kind of a good start, isn't it, to a webinar session. So we'll just give it another 20 seconds or so to let the last few people join us, and we will get started for this afternoon's session. Okay. Right, we will get started, and anybody that's arriving can catch up with us in just a moment. So thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon for this App Advisory Plus webinar with ApprovalMax. We're going to be talking about a number of different areas this afternoon, but essentially looking at the often underplayed importance of control in how our clients spend money, how they place orders to purchase goods and services, how that approval process works, but equally how approvals are made for actually making payments. Everybody's aware of the challenges with payment fraud. I know my team regularly get emails purporting to be from me asking them to make payments. We're just in a much higher risk scenario situation these days than we were some time ago. So tools like ApprovalMax really give us some sense of control over what's going on with our clients' businesses. So delighted to have everybody here. And from my point of view, in terms of App Advisory Plus, really pleased we're doing this with ApprovalMax. I've shared the story a number of times that ApprovalMax, and it was an implementation of some technology we were doing for a client some time ago, where we first came across ApprovalMax, and it was the challenges that I had in terms of understanding how do these different bits of technology fit together. That ultimately led me to have some conversations with some colleagues around there's got to be somewhere that accountants can go to get the kind of support that says, hey, I'm trying to implement this product with this product and this product. How do we make it work? So I've got a lot to thank ApprovalMax for in terms of what we're doing now with App Advisory Plus. So introductions, those of you that haven't come across me before, my name is Will Farnell. I'm one of the co-founders of App Advisory Plus and also the director and founder of Farnell Clark. And I'm joined today by Konstantin from ApprovalMax. Good afternoon, Konstantin. Do you want to just tell everybody who you are and where in the world you're sitting at the moment?
Yes, good afternoon, Will. Good everyone. Good morning, everyone. And yeah, well, thanks a lot, first of all, for hosting us. And it's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar series. Well, I am director of product at ApprovalMax and co-founder of ApprovalMax, and I'm taking care of all the design, vision, product requirements, and such things. And as a part of this job, well, I'm actually talking a lot to different clients of ours from different industries and discussing their spend management challenges and opportunities, right? So that's why we have quite a lot of knowledge collected in ApprovalMax. And yeah, well, we're a UK company, and currently I'm actually residing in Moscow.
Excellent. And how's the weather there today?
Well, it is getting colder each day, and well, some people like it, some people do not. Generally, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. I'll come back to you in just a moment, Konstantin, to give us a bit of an overview of specifically some of the challenges that you and the team at ApprovalMax are solving. So brief introduction, everybody, to the agenda today. We've done some introductions. I'm going to ask Konstantin in a moment just to give us a brief overview of what ApprovalMax does. As I say, for us, it really unlocked some challenges that we were able to solve in working with the team some 12 months or so ago. So I'm sure everybody's going to get lots of value from understanding better what ApprovalMax do. We're going to talk about why spend controls are important, some of the challenges of workflows, what an end-to-end purchase to pay process looks like. And Konstantin's going to talk about the challenges that I had 18 months or so ago when we were looking at ApprovalMax, Receipt Bank, WorkflowMax, Xero. How did we get all of those products talking together? And even 18 months ago, ApprovalMax had some really useful workflow diagrams of how they work with these other products. But Konstantin some of that with us, and then we're going to look at some sector specific examples, because the use case is quite different depending on the sectors you're in, and I'm sure that everybody's going to be able to relate some of the things that Konstantin talks about to some of your clients specifically, and then we'll have some time at the end for questions. So on that note, Konstantin, please tell us who ApprovalMax are, what are the problems you solve, and broadly how you do it.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to share this. Well, first of all, ApprovalMax is an app that is taking care of approval workflow automation. That is the essence of what we do. And approval workflow automation actually is a very important enabler for spend control. And what we're doing, we are automating a number of very important processes, such as purchase order creation approval, bill review and approval, well, trade note review and approval, and actually we have some additional very nice things like matching of bills to purchase orders, budgeting, and audit trails and such. So it is on the one hand focused on the approval process, but on the other hand, it's not just about approval process, it is about the spend management topic as a whole, because, well, approval is just a part of it, right? So, and generally ApprovalMax actually fits into the end-to-end spend control process, which is actually one of the core parts of today's session. So on a high level, that's what we do.
Great. And spend control, what does it mean? Because we had a webinar we did with Soldo a while ago, and Soldo talk about spend control in terms of staff expenses, so or spend management. So when you talk about spend control, when you're talking to accountancy practices, what are we talking about here? What does it mean? What does it involve?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, I have a slide on that. So,
amazing.
What we are in the essence doing? Well, we are thinking about spend control in these three big parts, I would say, three big components. Well, first of all, it is about planning, right? And it is about properly compiling budgets and making sure that you are properly allocating resources to those projects, to those areas, to those departments, to those geos, depends on the organization structure that needs to be financed, that actually needs a budget. Then it is, of course, about the purchase itself. It is about making a commitment to the supplier, meaning that you need to prepare a purchase order, select a supplier, you need to be sure that you select a proper supplier, and you need to be sure that each purchase order is properly authorized before it is sent to the supplier, thus the commitment is made. And that is also, of course, about receiving a supplier invoice, making sure that it is not a fraud, it is not a fraudulent supplier invoice, right? That it is not a duplicate, that all the details are correct, that it is coded correctly, etc. And then there is a third component, and it is the payments part, right? And payments, well, sometimes it's a tricky part. And as a part of this process, as we see, the decision is made on which bills need to be paid right now, which bills should be paid a little bit later, how they should be paid, how to actually make the payment itself, because sometimes it is more automated, sometimes it is less automated, where you need to download some file, put it into your banking software and make a manual payment. So this is a high-level framework, right? So we see that generally our clients, they are thinking in these categories, but at the same time, they're all different. They are having different requirements in terms of budgets, different requirements and different best practices in terms of how they're doing payments. So that is the framework, and then it's all about the detail section.
And just in terms of observations here for those that are listening, because we're accountants, and lots of the people listening are going to be accountants, and they'll have gone through a training program, and the likelihood is they were taught about the importance of internal control, and this is a really kind of real life example, isn't it, of our ability to help clients manage internal control better. We're looking for different ways that as accountants we can add value to clients, we can improve the way they operate their businesses, and reducing risk of fraud and error and everything else is fundamentally things that we should be looking at opportunities to do it. And what you're doing here is almost providing some technology to kind of underpin the importance of those functions, I guess.
Yeah, well, in essence, financial controls is one of the key topics for us. Well, in the beginning, I have said that on the one hand, we are all about approval workflows, but approval workflow is an enabler. And one of the core benefits that we provide is actually financial control. And it is especially important. Well, there are different actually kind of applications of this financial control, I would say. So sometimes it's about internal rules. And sometimes, well, you just need to be compliant and you need to go through audits for some external control. And that also provides some specifics in terms of how it is organized. And by the way, that is one of the things that that we are going to mention today. So yeah, financial controls for sure one of the core things that we are covering.
Excellent. And I think you've got some examples in terms of how this workflow around the purchase to pay process works. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So getting from this high level framework to a little bit more specific thing. So that is a kind of standard typical workflow that we have. And well, disclaimer to have here is that it's not like each and every client of ours, not each and every client that we see are doing it exactly this way. Some companies are being switched on, some companies are being switched off. So it is also kind of a framework. But on a high level, it works as we see the following way. So first of all, as I have mentioned, the purchase order is raised, right? This part, by the way, is sometimes skipped. And we do know a number of clients saying, well, purchase orders, it is not for us. We don't want to have a formal process here. We are just dealing with invoices, supplier invoices when they are coming in. But well, to be honest, the best practice that we see, which allows you to actually enable this additional layer of financial control, I would say, is to deal with purchase orders, meaning that even before you make a commitment to the supplier, even before you start communicating with them and asking to, well, deliver some goods, provide some services, you have this formalized process where someone from the company is saying, yes, we need to do it, right? Because if you are skipping this purchase order part and dealing with the supplier invoice already, it means that, well, very likely goods have already been delivered and services have already been provided, but maybe it should not have happened at all. Maybe it should have been stopped in the very beginning. So that's why purchase orders are important. So purchase order is being created. It is properly authorized by all those managers who need to authorize it. It is sent to the supplier, and what is important, it is pushed to the accounting system. It is important to have it in the accounting system for a number of reasons. Let me highlight just one of them. Sometimes it is very cost efficient to just convert purchase order to a bill in the accounting system and save time on just entering data and do not rely on any data entry tools. Some of our clients prefer doing it this way. Some prefer to not do it this way, right? It is it depends on different requirements, but it is oftentimes used. Just copy purchase order to a bill. And actually, what is typically happening then is that well, supplier fulfills the purchase order. They are sending goods, they are providing services, and they are sending an invoice, right? And at this point, invoice, well, it needs to somehow appear in our process, right? And it is not too good if it is just a PDF file or an image, if supplier is sending this PDF file or an image. So oftentimes it should go to the, well, you can call it data entry tool or data digitization tool or data automation tool, right? There are different tools. OCR is one of them, right? Why not? OCR is also good. And these tools, they are quite good. They are saving you time. They extract data from a supplier invoice and push it to, well, there are some variations here, but the standard classic way is that they push it to the accounting system. And at this point, this bill should be properly authorized. And it is kind of a different authorization as compared to the approval of the purchase order. That is, by the way, one of the discussions that we're having with our clients, like, why should we approve a bill if we have already approved a purchase order? Well, it's not the same thing. The purchase order could have been perfectly correct, and it is stating all the correct data. But then when you receive the supplier invoice, it is for some reason not what you have expected, or it is all perfectly fine. But goods are not there, right? So and you do not want to pay it before you receive the goods. So that's why it is a separate process. This bill is reviewed, authorized, properly coded, and it is now residing in the GL as a fully approved bill. And then it's a matter of payment, right? And sometimes actually it is considered to be kind of a separate process. And that is, by the way, the thing that we support. We see it as a best practice. So when you approve a bill, it is not the same as saying, I want it to be paid right now. We see that it is a proper way to say that, yes, that is a correct bill. It's not a duplicate. It's not a fraud. All the details are correct. And coding is correct, etc. But then the payment, release of the money is a separate thing. Because, well, even though these 150 bills are properly authorized, it doesn't mean that you need to pay them all now. It depends on your cash flow. It depends on some other things. So it's another thing to release the money. So on a high level, that's how it looks like. And we could be actually digging into the details of
absolutely. And I mean, this is kind of the challenge that we faced 18 months ago. Is we had a client, they needed purchase order processing. We'd moved them off a fairly sophisticated but desktop accounting system. We'd moved them onto Xero, but they were really keen to have purchase order processing, payment approvals. We'd got them set up with Receipt Bank and Xero, and there was this gap. And it's kind of where Receipt Bank, ApprovalMax came in, but it was, so how's it going to work? How's it going to work in a tech stack? How do we get ApprovalMax talking to Receipt Bank and everything else? So what does a typical tech stack look like? What's the flexibility that accountants and their clients have with using ApprovalMax with other tools that they might already be using?
Yeah, well, that's a discussion that we are having a lot, to be honest, with our clients, well, with businesses and with accounting and bookkeeping practices. And the question is generally about application stack, right? And well, there are lots of tools, right? So the question is, well, how do they all stick together to cover this spend control? And we are thinking about these different applications in the following categories. So there is a starting point, and starting point is the GL tool or cloud accounting tool, which is in the essence the centralized place to store all the key data and, well, to prepare reports and do all the necessary things. Could be Jira, could be QuickBooks Online, could be something else. That is the centerpiece of the system. Then what our clients are oftentimes using, they're using these data automation, data digitization tools, such as Receipt Bank, Hubdoc, Data Marina, Auto Entry. There are also other tools. And well, we see that it is not like there is just one best tool and other tools are not that good. It's absolutely not the case. We see that different clients prefer different tools. And sometimes that's kind of an insight that we see, that sometimes clients even combine different tools. They're saying, well, for this type of bills that we're pulling from the sources, we're going to use Hubdoc. It's now part of Jira, and there are certain very nice things about Hubdoc. But for other types of bills, we're going to use another tool because it's good at this part. Why not, right? So it could be like this mix and match, right, as we call it. So it is data digitization part, and then, well, you need to have also a process, because one part is to have the digitalized bill, but what you're going to do with it. It should be properly authorized. It should be properly reviewed to make sure that all the codings are there. And this is what ApprovalMax is doing. Well, we are doing two parts in this picture. We are doing this purchase order automation piece, and we are doing bill automation piece, kind of linking this data digitization tools and GL tools, kind of, right? I'm simplifying things a little bit. So on a high level, that's the application stack. That's how we're thinking about it.
Okay, and specifically, if we get into kind of the bill automation piece, how does that typically work in with say Receipt Bank and ApprovalMax?
Yeah, well, there are a couple of scenarios here. We have kind of our classic solution, and the classic solution is that there are data entry tools that are extracting the data and pushing it to zero. Then we pick it up from zero and start the approval process. That is our classic solution used by almost all of our clients. There are some very nice things about it. And one of the things is that you could be using different tools and a combination of those tools. But actually, we see that there are lots of clients using specifically Receipt Bank. And we decided to, well, take it to another level and build a direct integration with Receipt Bank. So now there are actually even 3 options to use to configure the workflow. You could be using data entry tools and push documents to zero, and we will pick them up from zero. Then there is an option to use direct integration with Receipt Bank. And there is a third option, also a brand new thing. You could be creating bills directly in ApprovalMax. In some cases, it saves actually lots of time. So you can provide this bill creation capability to those people who don't have access to zero, but who anyway needs to create bills. So it's quite handy. Once the bill is there, it is going through a multi-step authorization workflow. Matching could be done at this point. Matching of bill to a purchase order. And finally, a fully approved bill arrives into the GL system. So that's the overall framework for the bill processing.
And with that integration there now with Receipt Bank, it kind of feels like it's a great opportunity for firms who are using Receipt Bank as their core tool to be having a conversation with all of their clients about the importance of spend control, because it's so easy to kind of make that process work. It's just about kind of talking to the client and explaining why this stuff's so important, the risks they're mitigating by using it, and it should be best practice.
Yeah, in essence, we're trying to help our clients, well, accounting, bookkeeping practices specifically, to have a standard stack, because, well, it could be extremely confusing. And I've seen many people saying, well, 700 add-ons, how do you do that? And how do you combine them all into a single solution? And we're trying to streamline the flow as much as possible. And Receipt Bank to ApprovalMax direct integration is one of the ways to have this kind of golden standard for this process, and make it kind of a default app stack for lots of our clients.
Yeah, great. And purchase orders, creating purchase orders, linking that with Xero or QuickBooks, of course, whichever people are using, because this is part of the challenge, isn't it, that some of the cloud providers have had in terms of, you take stock management, for example. Some of the more traditional desktop platforms do this stuff really well. The cloud accounting tools focus on the things that they do well, and we have to rely on add-ons like ApprovalMax to plug the gaps. And purchase orders is kind of something that any reasonable size organization should be thinking about, in terms of controlling budget, cost centers, and so on. So how does that work?
Well, we're thinking about purchase orders as a kind of additional layer of financial control, as I have mentioned, and as proactive way to control your spend. Because in essence, well, you could be dealing with this incoming supplier invoices, and it is a very good, nice step. But in the essence, if you want to make sure that you're not making any commitments, you're not spending money without proper confirmation, the best practice is, of course, to use purchase orders. The specifics of ApprovalMax in this sense is that you can actually give purchase order requisition price to those people who don't have access to Xero at all. They could be not users at Xero. And you can actually have some restrictions for them. For example, you have a couple of departments, and you could say, well, those people who work in this department, when they raise a purchase order, they should be selecting only the tracking category that is a tracking category of their department, say marketing or sales or engineering or something. And this way you're putting additional control. The same thing applies to suppliers. So if you don't want all those requesters to create new suppliers, like ad hoc, like it's happening in Europe, for example, then you can say, well, okay, you shouldn't be able to create new suppliers. And in a sense, of course, it's a much more controlled environment for, and it is an important part of the spend control, in other words.
Yeah, great. So we talked a bit about the different processes that you support, and they're all things that we should be thinking about, all of our clients in different sectors. How's this going to help provide control over it? I think there's different use cases in different sectors, and I think for the next kind of 10 minutes or so before we start to wrap up, we're just going to focus on perhaps three sectors in terms of some of the different use cases. Now whilst a number of the people that are watching perhaps don't get too involved in the education sector, I know that you guys have done some really quite amazing stuff in New Zealand around the education sector. So I think you're going to share a bit of that in terms of what you've done there, and then we're going to just touch on another couple of sectors in terms of highlighting some of the different use cases, because I think this is a big challenge that firms have when they're thinking about using apps and technology, understanding what the drivers are and the use cases for those. So do you want to take us through your education example? Because I know it's a really interesting one.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, we have picked up a couple of verticals, and education is one of them. And the idea, yes, is to kind of apply this framework that we have discussed to a couple of specific verticals and see how it works exactly for them. Because, well, even though this framework is applicable to all the verticals, etc., there are all the time nuances. And, well, we have some insight, and we have some, believe it or not, ready to use application stacks for some verticals, and we're happy to share because, well, we couldn't find them useful and just save some time on searching for different applications. So education is one of such sectors where we have a pretty well-defined application stack. But, well, there is another disclaimer to make. This sector is oftentimes geo-specific. And here we are talking, this particular case is about New Zealand schools, and there is a very clear demand, very clear need. In the UK, it might be different, right? So the app stack might be modified a little bit. So you'll need to take this one, just make some changes, adjustments based on the geo of the client, and then it will be ready to go. So all in all, education, what it is all about, I mean, how we see it in terms of spend control. Well, first of all, it is oftentimes government money, right? And it means that, well, you need to properly plan it, and you need to properly apply for this money for the next year. It's not exactly investment, right? That's a different case, but, well, you're applying for this money to receive, and you need to be compliant with certain rules, right? With certain regulations on how this is done. And in the application stack that you currently see, there is Jira as a centerpiece, as a GL tool. There's HubDoc that is taking care of data entry, data automation. There is ApprovalMax that is taking care of approvals. And there is Monty, a very, very nice tool that is focused specifically on this industry, and specifically, to be honest, on the specific geos, right? It's not like you can take Monty and apply it to any country in the world, but for those countries that it is applicable, it is doing a very good job. And it allows to work with numbers, those budgets that you prepare and those spendings that you report based on these exact rules that you have by the government, right? So that is specifics of the educational sector, right? It is, first of all, it's geo-specific. It is about proper planning and proper reporting. And it is about having this, well, very special reporting here for the government, right? So yeah, that is the core specifics of the educational sector as we see. By the way, if you are from the educational sector, from the different geo, and you have some questions like how you would like it to get organized, we can have a chat. We're very open to do that.
Great. But you've highlighted some of the use cases there in the bullet points on the left, in terms of lots of people making lots of purchases with lots of people involved in the authorization process, and fundamentally that's the bit that you're solving, isn't it? I think that's the important point here in terms of this example. Just because lots of people making spending decisions, we've got to find a way to kind of pull that together and control it effectively and make sure it's being allocated in the right cost centers and so on.
Yeah, absolutely correct. There are truly lots of people, teachers, who are making the spendings, And if you don't have a proper control over that, well, it's going wrong way sometimes, right? And you have problems reporting to the government. So yeah, that's the problem.
Excellent. So just before we move on to the next one, if anybody's got any questions as we kind of get towards the end that you want myself, Konstantin, to answer, pop them in the Q&A box on the screen, and we'll get to those in a moment. We've got two more examples to take a look at here before we wrap up. So something that certainly some of the listeners may be involved in is not-for-profit. So charities, community interest companies, social enterprises, again, different sets of challenges. What do you see here in terms of how your clients are using approval processes in this sector, Konstantin?
Well, NFP sector is a big deal for us, to be honest. And one of the core reasons is that, well, in order to be a compliant and properly organized NFP, you need to have certain strict rules in terms of how your processes look like. And the specifics here is that approvals, they are oftentimes made by people for whom it is not, to be honest, a full-time job to be part of this NFP. They are not sitting in the office. Obviously, also right now, they are not sitting in the office, but they need to approve certain spendings. And it means it's just hard to catch them, right? And well, the specific case I have in mind is a sports club. And this sports club is not obviously made for profits, it's just a community, but they have some funding, they have some budgets, and they have people who are in charge of different sections as a part of this club. And for those people who are authorizing spendings, it is, of course, not a full-time job, as I have mentioned, to authorize the spendings. They are just working on some other projects, and from time to time, they need to review a particular spending and authorize it, right? And if it is done manually, it means that, well, someone needs to, well, combine emails or chase them somehow to get this approval. And well, there are different actually people in the sports club, and they're in charge of different sports. In essence, one of them is boating, which I like, right? And if you are manually doing this approvals, it means that you need to chase different people for different approvals manually, and it is kind of a little bit of a nightmare. And that's why they are using ApprovalMax. That's why I enjoy it, because of these automated rules and because of remote approvals. It means that as a person who is in charge of gathering these approvals, you spend much less time on this, right? You're just configuring these rules. You're saying, if the spend is related to this boat, part of our sports club, it should go to this person. They just receive notification, click a button, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
And well, NFPs, they have some strict audit requirements. And when you are going through the audit process, you want to be sure that for each bill that has been authorized, you have a proper proof, like who has approved this bill. Was this head of boating section involved into this approval or not? If he was not involved, well, then this might be a problem. So this I would highlight as a core difference of NFP sector as we see it.
Yeah, and it's a big focus on corporate governance, isn't it? Which is becoming even more important for organizations to make sure they're being run effectively and governed effectively. And again, it comes back to that whole point of internal control, the importance of getting these internal controls right, and the role that we as accountants and advisors to clients play in supporting them in areas broader than just, hey, we've got to file the accounts at the end of the year. So that's a really good example. And the final one, I'm absolutely sure that there'll be people on the call that are supporting tech startups. Different set of challenges, different reasons that they want these controls in place. So share us some examples of what you're seeing in this space.
Yeah, well, being a startup company, it's fun to talk about challenges of startups because some of them we do see very clearly. So, well, startups, they have for sure some of specific challenges. First of all, startups, they are oftentimes growing fast and they are focusing on their main thing, right? So if you're a startup in software, you want to build software. If you're a startup in something else, you want to focus on exactly what you're doing. And accounting and keeping things together in this sense, it is not often the priority, while it is critical, right? While it's very important. And that's why we see that startups in this sense, they have a specific challenge. They want to outsource this accounting, and they want to get actually some insights from accountant, from advisor, who would say that, well, in this particular case, guys, what you should do, you should actually change a little bit your way to spend money in this direction, because you are obviously overspending. And startup owners, startup managers who are trying to build the company, they just don't have time, they don't have expertise oftentimes to derive this insight themselves. So they're just delegating this to advisors. And for advisors, it is quite interesting, because some advisors, they have lots of different startups and they want to help all of them. And it means that actually they are having a bunch of quickly growing companies that are sometimes tending to make some expenses that they should not be making, right? And that's where the spend control becomes very important. And there is kind of sub case, if I can put it this way, a case where startup starts looking for investment. So first of all, investor wants to see that the startup is properly managed, right? They want to see that these guys are not just throwing money in the wind, that they are spending them wisely. And they want to see that they have all these financial controls in place, right? And once they invest in the startup, it's a little bit different story, but still it is also about spend control, because it is kind of investors' money that the startup is spending. And investors want to make sure that they're not just, once again, wasting all this money and building nothing, right? Yep. And we see that there are some investment companies that are focusing on investing in startups. They want to have similar controlled way to work with their startups. They want to see what they're doing, right? They want to authorize certain types of bills, but on the other hand, they don't want to spend, all the time they have to dig into details of each particular startup. So that's where the spend control is very important. And that's where ApprovalMax helps, because it actually provides this approval flow capability. So yeah, that's how startups are different. And yeah, it's very interesting to watch startups that are starting to use ApprovalMax and learn a little bit from them.
Yeah, and I think the observation, certainly what I see in my firm, is we're getting involved in much more kind of outsourced finance function work for firms, where we're the technology that we use has enabled us to offer services that we weren't able to offer in the days of desktop platforms, because of the need to be on site and so on, and that shifted quite a lot. So tools like this help us manage our risk exposure by managing the risk exposure that the client has, if that makes sense. So we're using it to provide an extra layer of control over the work that we're doing. So it fits very nicely in terms of what we do when we're delivering kind of fully outsourced finance function capability for our clients. So we're drawing to a close. So I want to just highlight some key takeaways for everybody before we take a look at some questions. So hopefully this has come through in the points that Konstantin's made during the course of the session, but we've got to look at kind of the entire purchase to pay process, rather than trying to take little elements of the function. How can we deliver greater value to our clients by looking at the whole kind of end-to-end spectrum? Think about the clients that we work with. What are the characteristics of what they do, their sector? Where's the risk? Where are the elements in their financial processes that need the most control? How can we support them to do that? We talked about tech stack. We talked about the ability to integrate. This is fundamentally really important, and the bit that took us a little while to get our heads around. But once it's there, the workflows are really integrated. I've often said that if we go back 10-15 years, kind of ERP type systems that gave us purchasing, HR, finance, all of it within one solution was outside of the reach of our smaller business clients. But the ability of the cloud accounting ecosystem means that we can build very cost-effective technology solutions that deliver what ERP delivers to larger organizations. So focus on the technology that supports the need for your clients' core needs, and we can build onto it from that. But purchase control, purchase approval, spend approval is fundamentally important for managing risk. So think about how you build that app stack. What we're going to do, everybody that's registered for the session, we're going to be sending out some documents to you via email to help you think about the kind of clients you've got that might benefit from this level of control payment process improvement, that hopefully gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with some of those clients. Anything to add to that, Konstantin? Have I wrapped that up succinctly in terms of key takeaways?
Yes, perfectly summarized. And yeah, well, I would add that on the one hand, the core things, the core companies of spend control are the same across different verticals, but we are learning constantly from different clients that we have. Well, we're actually building case studies with them, and we are oftentimes surprised by specific challenges that this particular vertical in this particular geo have. So we see that, yes, I have mentioned this education sector in New Zealand is a little bit different from UK, it's also a little bit different from US, and if we take, for example, startups, they also are different in different countries. That is very exciting and interesting to learn. But in the essence, yes, you need to dig into the specifics and see how what are the challenges of this particular type of clients. There are some best practices, but they need to be narrowed down for this particular case.
Yep, great, excellent. So finally, and then we will get to questions. I promise. If you are not yet a partner with ApprovalMax, if you sign up through App Advisory Plus, you can get the benefits of the free ApprovalMax Partner Edition. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to do that. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take a look at our Q&A and see what we've got here. So there was a question in terms of is Receipt Bank and ApprovalMax integration fully live? Is that ready to go, Konstantin?
Well, there are two parts of this integration. There is an integration for Jira, right? So where Receipt Bank is pushing documents to ApprovalMax and ApprovalMax is pushing them to Jira. This one is in public beta, meaning that, well, you can start using it. So you can go to Receipt Bank, and when you click on this integrate button, you will see there a special button that is called ApprovalMax for Jira. And you can start using it. It still has this beta tag. Well, we see that it is generally a good idea to keep it this way for a couple of weeks, but it is available, so you can start using it. And we have already a bunch of clients who are doing this already. The integration Receipt Bank to ApprovalMax to QuickBooks Online, it is currently in private beta, so you will not see it there yet. But if you ping us, we are happy to enable this for you. And it will be going through the same stages. So in a couple of weeks, I think we'll be going into the public beta, where it will be available for everyone to try, and then finally it will become GA. So yeah, we're targeting actually to be GA for both integrations till the end of this year.
Excellent. So you heard it here first. If you want to get access to the private beta, drop the guys at ApprovalMax a message and they will sort that for you. So that's great. Second question here. Thank you, Caroline. Could you outline the workflow if you have purchase orders to match to bills and the client uses Receipt Bank, ApprovalMax, WorkflowMax, and Xero? That's we can certainly, if we can't answer that for you on the call here, Caroline, I can certainly talk to you about that, because that is exactly the workflow that we had to deal with. The challenge in that process is a WorkflowMax bit. There's a bit of manual process in terms of that, but the Receipt Bank, ApprovalMax Receipt Bank, ApprovalMax, and Xero piece is absolutely spot on. That's really easy, and ApprovalMax have got some workflows that they can share on that. Certainly. Anything to add on that, Konstantin? Anything that you can shed any light on?
Yeah, well, that's exactly how we see it. So Receipt Bank, ApprovalMax, Xero piece works perfectly, including purchase orders, including receiving bills and matching bills to purchase orders. It's all perfectly fine. With WorkflowMax, yeah, well, that's a little bit of a challenging piece. So we are thinking of how to better plug it into the overall process, into the overall stack. Yeah, there is something we're thinking about, but yeah, currently, as Will mentioned, it's a little bit of a manual process sometimes.
Yeah, great. Excellent. So that is all the questions we have. We're coming up to the 45 minutes. So all there is left to say really is, firstly, thank you, Konstantin, for joining us and sharing that best practice. That's really useful. Thank you to everybody that's attended the session. We will be circulating the recording to everybody that registered tomorrow, along with this questionnaire, which we hope will help you identify some of the clients that may get some benefit from using ApprovalMax with your clients. Hope it's been useful. Thank you again for taking the time. Thank you, Konstantin, and have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much indeed.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care now.